bienvenue, hello and welcome. Today we have another book. We are starting actually a very, very important writer of the 20th century. We are starting to have a look at Virginia Woolf. So, before we start, I need to remind you that we have not got Patreon, not got sponsorship, not got any advertising. We have a shop. And in our shop, we have templates to help you with your writing. These have free shipping. We have these t-shirts. And we have books. We have this book that helps you to become to write a first draft of a novel. We have so this book. We have this book that is brand new. Is a science fiction comedy series. The first of the series is new in paperback. We have this book, which is set in rural Australia. It is a story of a community and a farming family. We have this book, which is poetry and verse. And we have this book, which is now in paperback too, and is set in the First World War in Katoomba. So they are all available on our shop. So what are we having a look at today? Today we are having a look at this book, the one with the little doggy. This is Virginia Woolf's book Flush, and this book was actually written in the 1930s. It is one of lesser known novels. Obviously, you're thinking, why are we starting with Virginia Woolf and we are not starting with Orlando or Mrs. Dalloway? Pasky, because Orlando and Mrs. Dalloway are saturated across YouTube and we would like to stand out, so we do the minor novels. That is why. Not because we cannot do the Orlando and Mrs. Dalloway, but because there is so much of them. It's sort of like why Janus did not do the Magic Toy Shop. Everybody does a Magic Toy Shop. So there is. So we do Flush. Flush is an interesting novel. It is barely a novel. It is only about 100 pages plus notes. Flush was the Cocker Spaniel of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And Virginia Woolf wrote a biography of the Cocker Spaniel of Elizabeth Barrett Browning after having been reading the correspondence of Elizabeth Barrett Browning and finding the references to the little dog that she had quite charming and endearing, and wished to write a biography, a life of this little dog. Of course, this is Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf is a very important feminist writer, very important writer, very experimental writer. Flush is possibly her most, in terms of literary style, it is one of her more conventional novels. I do not count the early novels as the very, very early novels. But of her post Mrs. Dalloway work, this is probably the most conventional. So therefore, it is very accessible in terms of reading. Virginia Woolf also had a Cocker Spaniel, and when she was writing this, and this no doubt is why she was so attracted to the Spaniel of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Now, Elizabeth Barrett Browning was a 19th century poet. She married Robert Browning, and they eloped to Italy, and she wrote her most famous poem is Sonnet to the Portuguese, which I think that everybody knows. I am not actually terribly a fan of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Again, that's I find a lot of the 19th century a bit is a repressed or swooning or over the top or too sentimental. So I am actually not a fan of either Barrett Browning or Robert Browning as their work themselves. This little book, however, I do like quite a lot. Virginia Woolf chose to write about the doggy, the life of a lapdog, the life and adventures of the lapdog, because she wished to highlight the fact that the lives of women, the lives of women poet, the life of a woman like Elizabeth Barrett Browning, or any women of that world, were as obscure and as difficult to research as the life of a dog. If a dog has a longer paper trail than many women writers, it is understandable how they have been excluded from the discussion. If you cannot find them, how do you include those voices? This is obviously a big question for historians. How do you bring these voices into the historical narrative so that it's not all big and powerful men only? There are numerous voices who are excluded, and Virginia Woolf was thinking about this in the 1930s in relation to white women. But if you look at social history now, you see that a great many different groups who had been excluded are now being included within the historical narrative, which is something that I find very interesting myself. So this is also being read nowadays in the 21st century in a different way to the way that it has traditionally been read. So it has been read very much as a feminist text and looking at the invisibility of women. Now it is looked at in terms of, or more commonly looked at in terms of the representation of non-human life. So how is the consciousness of a dog presented? And Virginia Woolf does look very much at how does this little dog view the world? What does the world look like? The world look like from the perspective of this little dog, this curious, friendly, companionable little animal. What does the world look like? And her word is primarily a word of smell. And so you get a very olfactory experience writing this novel, which is actually something that it works a lot better than the book Perfume, which is supposedly about scent, but I found it when I read that, I found it a very dull and unscented experience, which is curious. Scent is a very, very difficult thing to write about. It is not something that we really find easy to put into words. Is smell, although it is, even though humans have not the sensitive smell of a doggy, we do have the very powerful response to smell. All you have to do is go and change a cat litter box and you will see what a powerful response you have to smell. So that is something that is really quite interesting. And if you want to look at something where the idea of how do you represent the perspective of a creature that is not human, how do you view the world if you are putting a humanness somewhere else? This is a very interesting book, which is not just applicable to the animal, but think of monsters. How do they see the world? How does, how does Dracula see the world? How does Frankenstein's monster see the world? Is it human consciousness? Or is it something completely different? How does AI see the world? There are so many different applications to the concept of viewing the world from a non-human subjectivity. And that is what Virginia Woolf was able to experiment with. One of the reasons that I find her quite inspirational is because none of her books are alike. Not two of her books are alike. She never wrote the same thing twice, and this is because she had control of the means of production, to sound very, very Marxist. She had the press in the basement. She published through Cockie Press. She was technically self-published. She owned the publishing company, which gave her immense freedom to write the books that she wished to write and to experiment freely. And next time I see you, I will bring you another book in which Virginia Woolf experimented very, very freely. So, au revoir, and I will see you again later. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.